Blogger. In this week's episode, I am covering a movie so obscure and random that I asked several of my friends to try to guess what I was covering. And I usually do that, and usually at least one of them is able to guess. This time, not one of them was able to guess because it is so obscure and so random. If you clicked on this, you know the title. I don't know why I'm stalling. Yellow Submarine. It is technically a Beatles movie. It is a Beatles jukebox movie similar to Across the Universe. But I'll get into that. It is a 1968 animated film directed by George Dunning, written by Lee Minoff, and starring John Clive, Geoffrey Hughes, Peter Batten, and Paul Angelis. Okay, I don't know how to pronounce that last one. What's that? You're confused? Shouldn't it star the Beatles? That's what I thought. I saw this movie 10 years ago, and I thought, oh, this is what the Beatles sound like. They kind of sound a little off, but I don't know. I haven't heard them in a while. This time I was watching, I was like, yeah, that definitely doesn't sound like the Beatles. They do make a cameo appearance at the end. Like, right before the credits, there's a live action scene that's like maybe 30 seconds long, and they appear as themselves, and their voices are definitely different. And I found out afterwards that there's a story behind Yellow Submarine. It was kind of contractual. They didn't want to do it. They didn't want to make the movie. They didn't even play themselves. Some other people played themselves. Other people played them. In fact, the only reason they did that live action scene at the end was to complete a contractual agreement obligation. They had to appear in the film. It had to be a Beatles movie. So they had to be in the film in some capacity. So they just kind of slapped that together. And be like, see, we're in the movie. Hey. It kind of reminds me of Van Morrison. He has an album called Paying Dues, and he just wanted out of his contract, and he had one album left on his contract. So he went into to the studio, and in one session, with I think his guitar was out of tune. He just cranked out 36 songs. Just really quick. Some of them were really short, and it's just to get one out, or let's crank one out really fast. Just to say, there's a contractually obligated album. That's kind of what the Beatles did here, except they didn't just crank out a movie. They filmed a 30-second scene and called it a day. Which, that's not a slight on them. That's actually kind of funny. Yeah, they didn't like how their second film, Help, came out, so they were just like not very enthusiastic about doing this film. And so, knowing that this technically wasn't a Beatles movie, that kind of lightened up something else in my mind. I heard years ago that Walt Disney and Robert Zemeckis was in talks of doing a Yellow Submarine remake. And I was like, no, you cannot do that. That is wrong. Because you'll be remaking the Beatles, and you can't remake the Beatles. But then I learned this little tiny detail, and you wouldn't be remaking the Beatles. It'd basically be like doing a remake of Across the Universe. Again, it's basically the same thing, except not animated. That one's not animated. And they actually sing it, and across the universe, it's different versions because the actors sing it. The actors don't sing it in the Beatles and in Yellow Submarine because the Beatles aren't technically in it. It's classified as a jukebox musical, which is basically what that is. When they play a bunch of Beatles songs. Eleanor Rigby is like the opening song, and of course the Yellow Submarine and a bunch of other Beatles songs. They're all well known. The animation style is very unique, especially looking back at the time, because it's got the Beatles name on it. You would think you would have like the highest level of animation quality, because like the year before, Disney had made The Jungle Book, and then the year after that, or the 2 years after actually, the Aristocats. And so that's Disney, and this is the Beatles. But you would think they would have like top of the line animation. Instead, they have I wouldn't say it's bad animation. It's because it's not. I'll say it's unique animation. It has a very distinct style. I've seen people doing parodies of Yellow Submarine, and you know immediately what they're parodying because it has a very distinct style. It's kind of like when someone does a parody of a Monty Python animation, you know what they're trying to do a parody of because it has a distinct style. But like, there are videos I've seen of people reviewing that movie that criticize the animation. But going back to the proposed remake of Yellow Submarine, it would have been a CG animated film, obviously, especially Robert Zemeckis. It was around the time it was in 2009, so like that's around the time that he was doing like Polar Express and all that. That was what people like to call the Uncanny Valley animated films, even though I'm not really bothered by that. I love Polar Express and his version of Christmas Carol, Jim Carrey, and like all of those films. Like, everyone is always criticizing the animation in that, saying, "Oh, it's so creepy looking." I don't mind it. Well, especially in Christmas Carol, I think it's meant to be creepy. It's not. I wouldn't consider that one a kid's film. It's meant to be scary. The original novel is scary. It just looked on as a kid's story. Probably because it was written by Charles Dickens, who basically did children's story. Okay, I don't consider it a children's story. It may have been written to be a children's story. I am getting off topic here. But again, knowing that this technically wasn't a Beatles movie, I'm not 100% against a remake. Of course, Disney shut down Robert Zemeckis' animation studio, and then he later went on to say that a remake of Yellow Submarine would be a bad idea. But now that you put that idea out there, I think it's only a matter of time before it does get a remake, especially considering it isn't technically a Beatles movie. It'd be like remaking... this probably has happened, but like a Charlie Chaplin film. Like, you can't make a new Tramp film because there's only one Charlie Chaplin. And yeah, they did a Three Stooges movie, but look how that turned out. Okay, if they had just left out the Jersey Shore aspect, I think it would have been great. They had to throw in that modern pop culture thing that it didn't age well. It's very dated. But those were characters. And even the Three Stooges, they got swapped out at one point. I think Curly Curly died, and then they recasted him, the original one, which was kind of awkward because he was the brother of Mo, and it's a whole thing I won't get into. But yeah, like, I think like the big thing that makes a difference is that the Beatles don't voice themselves in the movie. Someone else does. Other people voice them, and they just do a little cameo at the end. So that little detail alone, I think it makes it okay to do a remake, because it's not like you're doing a remake of Hard Day's Night or Help or something. That'd be totally different. I think the reason that this has become like more known lately is there was some test footage from 2009 that leaked on TikTok, and I saw some of it, and granted, it didn't look great. It looked terrible, but it also looked like it was in like pre-production, early development stage. It was like they had just barely started rendering these animations, so of course they look terrible. It's like whenever somebody hacked Rockstar and released a bunch of GTA 6 stuff, and people are like, oh, this looks terrible, how can they, this doesn't look like a next-gen game, Rockstar's doing a terrible job. Yeah, the footage they released is early development, and so of course it's gonna look bad. It doesn't start off looking great. It doesn't start off looking 4K high resolution, and it's going to be, of course. It doesn't start that way. So the test footage we have looks very awful, and that's again what people are criticizing. This would have been a terrible movie. I see why no. The only reason that it was canceled was because the studio closed. Disney closed them down. If that hadn't happened, I guarantee you this film would have been made. It was going ahead with it. They cast the Beatles characters. They'd already been cast, and the different characters, like the leader of the Blue Meanies, he was being played by David Tennant. And there were like 3D models of all these characters. It was being made. They weren't just talking about making it. They were making it. If the studio hadn't been closed down, we would have this movie. And up until a couple days ago, I was thinking, oh, thank God they canceled that remake. But now, knowing what I do know, I'm like, maybe we could have used a remake. And I know what everyone thinks. Like, oh, why do a remake of a good movie? You don't need to do remakes of everything. That's not always a bad thing. Remakes aren't always a bad thing. It is possible to do a remake and add to the original. In fact, John Carpenter's The Thing, that is a remake. And it's crazy how few people actually know that. I hear people say, there's no such thing as a good remake, it's terrible. And then I say, The Thing is a remake. How dare you? Well, yeah, it is a remake. And I will keep saying that because there's a lot of people that want to deny that. So, I'm not saying that a remake of Yellow Submarine would have been better than the original, made people forget about it, all that. But I think it would have, at the very least, brought it to a wider audience. Because, for starters, Yellow Submarine currently is not streaming on anything. I bought it on Blu-ray. It was like a limited edition, special edition. It came with stickers and these transparent things, and it's really cool. It came with a bunch of extra stuff, a little booklet with some artwork, and it was really cool. I like it, and so I own Yellow Submarine, and it was really cool. I like it. I keep saying that. But the reason I had to do that is because it wasn't streaming anywhere, and I am not downloading. I've had all the movies I buy. Sometimes it's because I can't find it anywhere else. I can't stream it. People are like, "Oh, just download it." I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing that. Like, everyone just says, "Oh, just download it. Just download it. Just download it." I'd rather either stream it or buy it. So, yeah. Oh, really quick, there is a very subtle reference to Zodiac. There's a very subtle reference to Zodiac not in Yellow Submarine, because that happened after. The villains of the film, there's these creatures called the Blue Meanies. Whenever the Zodiac Killer was writing to the police and he was referring to the police, he called them Blue Meanies. And it's theorized that he was referencing Yellow Submarine. It's very likely, because I think it was popular at the time. But, like, it is kind of a random thing. Like, he did do a lot of pop culture references sometimes. Like, they have something they call the Exorcist letter, where he basically gives his review of The Exorcist, and he did it all the time. Like, he referenced it, like, that book and that movie, the man is the deadliest animal. Yeah. Deadliest catch. Deadliest game. I think I would know more, guys. So you ought to. So it's a random thing thrown in there. But yeah, I think that is it. I will end the episode here. I have the next... The next 7 episodes. I have all the episodes through the end of October planned out, which that never happens. Usually I know the next episode or a possible upcoming episode, but I have all the Halloween episodes planned out. In fact, I bought a movie just because... Actually, I referenced it in my last episode where I said all of them I'm going to buy or stream, except one. I can only find it on a library streaming app. Update. It was removed from the library streaming app. So I looked again. And I found one copy online on Amazon, and it was from a Goodwill. I think it was in Michigan. Point is, I found probably the only copy online. This is a really hard movie to find. It'll be the first movie of October. The next movie I'm covering... Actually, hang on. Let me see. I have a list. I actually made a list of all the movies I'm covering. I think the next one is... Yes. The next one I don't own. I was going to buy it, but then I found the one that I ended up finding at a Goodwill, and I bought that instead. The one that I was going to buy, which is the next episode, is streaming on Max. So it was either buy the movie that's streaming on Max or buy the movie that I literally cannot find anywhere else. So I'm gonna have to watch that on Max. I wanted to own it. I probably still buy it after I review it, but there's not enough time to buy it and still review it for next week. So anyway, I'm gonna end the episode here.